going sideways. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I bet this Aboriginal title scheme is creating a lot of, that would be a real, lot of people coming out for that, I'm sure.
I'd like to call our regular council meeting on Monday, April 13th to order at 6 p.m. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor McNeil Smith. My council colleagues at the table this evening, to my far left, Councillor Novick, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor O'Toole, to my far right, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Gurnett. Good evening to members of staff in the chamber and to members of the public, both in the chamber, to our presenters this evening, and to those who may be watching the live webcast or a recording of the meeting at a later date. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we are gathering, our meeting, is the traditional territory of the WSÁNEĆ people, including the Tsawout Nation, the Tsartlip Nation, the Bobrowich Nation, the Malahat Nation, and the Tseycum Nation. In turning to the approval of the agenda, there are no additions or changes since the agenda was published last Thursday. I would look for a motion to approve. Councillors Duck and Novick. Call the question. Those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? None opposed. That carries. And similarly, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of our March 23rd meeting. Councillors Duck and Novick, thank you again. Any corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Thank you. None are opposed. That carries. The next item we have business is under 7A, which is our regular public participation period, where we invite members of the public to come forward to address council. We ask that you provide your name, the municipality that you reside in, or the organization that you represent. And there is just a little button at the bottom of the microphone to make it live for the recording. You'll see a red light. I'll call for a first time. Anyone wishing to come forward this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Barbara Follett, Town of Sidney. This evening I'd like to speak to agenda item 12B, second recommendation. I was surprised to see that a majority of council supported the April 7th application for a zoning amendment at 2270 Harbour Road. Of all of that is special about our 5 square kilometer town, we have something not every town has, and certainly for a town of our size, there are few that do. We have a light industrial area on the west side and a working Harbour Road marine zone. The staff report of April 7th gives a well-reasoned summation in support of maintaining that current zone. Within the downtown core of Sidney, where the zoning is amenable to professional office space, we have a number of buildings and units available and even vacant, and in some cases have been for an extended period of time. So while it can be appreciated that the proponent has experienced challenges finding the right tenant or purchaser for their product, I am not convinced that that is reason enough to change the conditions of use for 2270 Harbour Road. This evening I urge Council to uphold the current Harbour Road W1 zone and to deny zoning amendment application number RZ 100115, as was recommended in the April 7th Committee of the Whole staff report. I will leave you with the following quote from Scott Davies, the developer, owner and operator of Harbour Haven Marine, who in May of 2022, when first pitching his project, said, "It is really unique. I cannot think of anywhere else on the island like Harbour Road, where you have everything mostly marine oriented. It is quite a special area. Sidney really is the gateway for boating in BC." Let's keep it that way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming forward. I'll turn to see if there's a next speaker. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. It's pre-primed. David Calverley, the Town of Sidney. Barbara Follett just made the case so much better than I could. She had all details laid out. I can only tell you that From my background, from my history there as part of the Economic Development Commission, and before that, or after that, the Economic Development Committee, we spent a lot of time looking at Harbour Road. We also spent a lot of time during the OCP review, and I was on the OCP review committee. We talked a great deal about it and the value of Harbour Road. We know that there's a massage parlour there. We know that there's other things there. There's some housing there. But the piece that we're talking about, or you'll be talking about this evening, is right in the middle of what should be prime marine real estate. I can only add my comments to Ms. Fallett's and say, please, keep this marine. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. I'll call for a second time if there are any speakers. Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dave Sargent, and I'm a representative for High Street. It's nice to see you all again. The last time I was here, my colleague Eric provided a thorough presentation on our project for 9972 3rd Street. Eric could be here tonight. He's actually the lead on the project, but he's expecting his firstborn any minute, any day right now, so he couldn't risk traveling. Of course, Council is very familiar with the project. We've been in front of you several times now. So I want to thank you for forwarding it to the Advisory Planning Commission. We appreciated the opportunity to gain insight from the community on their desires and priorities, especially since it can be difficult sometimes to separate the signal from the noise. APC members were very well prepared, and both myself and the project design team engaged in a detailed and thoughtful discussion about the merits of the project. In the end, APC provided several helpful refinement points, and most importantly, their unanimous support for the project. We're grateful for staff and APC's collaboration and look forward to moving ahead with the next steps and ultimately building new homes in Sydney. Thank you again, and I'm here for any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll call for a third time. Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jamie Wellborn. I'm a Sydney resident, and I'm just speaking as an individual tonight, not on behalf of any organization or commission. I'm speaking in regards to 9972 3rd Street. Generally, I'm supportive of the project, but 2 points came to mind that I haven't heard discussed yet. One is that the long-term bike parking in the underground parkade, as far as I'm aware, is planned to go between the parked vehicles and the walls. And so this will make it very difficult to access a bike if you're trying to get between two vehicles that might be parked there, or to get your bike out. It's going to staff, when I asked them about it, they were saying it may actually require you to move the vehicle first to get access to the bike parking space. So not sure the perfect solution there, but it's something to consider. And I'd also like to see some sort of mechanism to ensure that rental tenure is protected, preferably indefinitely, but as long as possible. Considering that purpose-built rental buildings are being removed for this project, it's important to have a variety of options, and rental is an important part of that. I appreciate that it is currently planned as rental. I just worry whether it'll stay that way forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wellborn, if you could just clarify your first point with regards to parking. You're referring to the access to bicycle parking in the underground?
Yes, for the long-term bike parking. So there's 22 spaces in the first floor is ground storage. And then in the underground parking, my understanding is the other, I believe it's 55 or so parking spaces. I talked to staff and they said it's going to be like kind of between, so the vehicle will park and then there'll be a little cement block and then there'll be a bike rack of some sort and then the wall. And so as far as I can tell, there's no easy way to, like there's no walkway back there or any way to really move the bike if there's vehicles parked around. So it's just something to consider.
Okay, thank you for raising that. Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Rob Simon. I'm from Sydney as well on 3rd Street. I'd like to address 9972 3rd Street and also specifically to the advisory committee advice that you just have received or will be receiving. I want to first of all acknowledge the hard work and technical expertise of staff, council, and of course the advisory committee itself. I attended that meeting and I kind of thought that, in my view, that even though there was technical documentation forward to the committee. What I thought was lacking was the 360 kind of view. So the voice of community members or surrounding neighbors. I thought that the technical paper, there were some flaws in it. For example, the paper and also the arborist reports, our arborist report talked about the protected cherry trees. But in the arborist report, they referred to cherry trees, but it actually showed as being not by law protected. So there was an error. And a committee member actually brought up the cherry trees and made a comment saying, well, they were just planted in a bad spot. And I thought, I would have wished that an actual staff member would have made a point saying that those were actually in place for a specific reason and by law protected. I actually emailed the arborist asking for them to make a correction. There was no response to that. But that made me reflect on the actual advisory committee, and I understand how it's constituted, understand what advice it gets, but there's on-the-ground experience that is there from neighbors. I think there's been a lot of comments about the structure, the size, the actual kind of presence that it will have on the block. And a lot of people seem to be, at least in my opinion, have talked about it's a big structure. There's been a lot of negative comments about it. I kind of thought about that. I'm going, we're asking to change the zoning from an R7 to an R6R. So not only are we going from 3 floors, but now to 4 floors, but they're asking for variances all around. So it's almost like a creep on the scope. When I looked at all the advice from staff, it seems to enable that rather than say, well, what would this look like if you actually respected the original zoning there? Because to make a plan based on the assumption that, for granted conclusion that it's going to be at the highest level zoning and the highest impact to the neighbors, I think is faulty. So I just wanted to just express those concerns. I was happy at the advisory committee where there is some things about the cherry trees and moving the driveway backwards. But it seems that though the community has spoken loud and clear that this is a lot of change in that block, and this is pushing the limits, and it just seems a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. So thank you very much.
Sorry, thank you for coming forward. And I'll call for a final time if there are any other speakers. Please.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I'd just take this opportunity to comment on a few of the items that came up from the speakers right now. First one was the zoning tenure. So we have agreed to put a covenant on the title so that it would be a purpose-built rental in perpetuity. In order to remove that, it would take staff or council's permission to do that. So we would have to come back before council in order to change it to a strata tenure. And in terms of going to the highest use zone, the zone was actually, just for a little bit of refresher, the property was actually downzoned with the hope of instituting a conversation around purpose-built rental. So originally, just a very short period ago, it was RM7. It was then downzoned in order to have a discussion about purpose-built rental, which we've done, and now come forward with a purpose-built rental project. In terms of the cherry trees, yes, we do have 2 arborists that have spoken, and 2 of them that have been here before to speak about those cherry trees. We'll also reach out to that neighboring community and ensure that we replace those trees if they were to be damaged during construction. They're small enough that they could actually be replaced. So I just wanted to make those few clarifications.
Thank you. Not seeing any other speakers, I'll close our public participation period and thank everyone for coming forward. We're next turning to presentations, and we're pleased to welcome Morgan Shaw, Executive Director of the Downtown Sydney BIA, and Natalie Bobrowich, the Business Development Manager. Please. And having come before us before, we know that you're aware that you have 10 minutes for your presentation, up to 10 minutes for your presentation. I'd be pleased if you take any questions that council may have after your presentation. Feel free to adjust the mic as you feel best. And just a button there to activate it.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. My name, as you know, is Natalie Bobrowich, and I'm the Business Development Manager with the Sydney BIA. And today I'll be providing an update on Year 2 of our Business Development Partnership with the Town of Sydney. This presentation highlights the key outcomes from this past year, along with the continued value of this partnership and where we're headed next. I'll begin with a brief executive summary and then walk through the role and value of the business development function, followed by key program highlights. I'll then touch on future priorities and plans for Year 3. This marks the second year of our 3-year partnership, and the focus this year was on strengthening the foundation built in Year 1. We expanded our data collection, increased business outreach, and deepened cross-sector collaboration to support more responsive and strategic programming. Despite ongoing global pressures, including inflation, labour constraints, and shifting trade dynamics, Sydney businesses have remained stable and confident. This continued resilience reinforces Sydney's position as one of the most economically resilient communities in BC. Key highlights from the year include continued workforce development initiatives, strong community events and engagement, sustained town-wide business support, and the release of the second annual Business Snapshot report. Overall, we're now building on a solid foundation and moving towards more targeted, data-driven support. This slide outlines how the role delivers value across the community. Over the past year, we've supported more than 900 businesses across Sydney through data collection, engagement, and direct support. A key focus has been proactive town-wide engagement through surveys, consultations, and events to better understand sector-specific challenges and opportunities. We've also strengthened regional partnerships and ensured Sydney is represented in broader economic discussions. Importantly, the role provides a direct communication channel between business and the town, helping ensure issues and insights are shared and addressed. We've also established a centralised, reliable point of contact for business support, whether that's navigating tariffs, workforce challenges, or funding opportunities. And finally, we've continued to foster connection within the business community through mixes, education, and strategic introductions, strengthening those peer networks that contribute to long-term resilience. I'll now highlight a few key initiatives from this past year that demonstrate how this work is supporting businesses across the entire community. The Sydney Employment Expo continues to be an effective workforce initiative. Earlier this month, we sponsored and supported Beacon Community Services to host a spring job fair to provide free booth space for businesses so that they could connect directly with job seekers. Close to 30 employers participated, and the event attracted nearly 200 job seekers. Most importantly, businesses reported a high quality of candidates, with many hires resulting directly from the event. This initiative supports both immediate hiring needs and positions Sydney as a strong destination for employment opportunities. The Work in Sydney Perk Pass, following a successful first year, returned in response to a strong demand and positive feedback from businesses. It continues to support employee attraction and retention by showcasing Sydney's amenities and lifestyle, while also helping businesses strengthen their employer branding. This program included both BIA member and non-BIA members, ensuring broad participation from across the community. It also provides valuable highlights into workforce trends, and notably, nearly 30% of redemptions were by employees working for businesses outside of the downtown core. The Business Snapshot report is a key tool in strengthening our data-driven approach. Now in its second year, it builds on our initial baseline and enables year-over-year analysis to track trends and performance. It integrates economic indicators, foot traffic data, and direct business insights, allowing us to identify emerging trends, sector shifts, and evolving challenges. This strengthens our ability to make informed decisions and ensures our programming is aligned with real business needs. This slide highlights both education and inclusive support. Our workshop series was designed directly from survey feedback and from the snapshot report. Sessions like AI Made Easy and the Digital Marketing Masterclass focused on practical tools businesses can apply immediately. Taking our workshops to the next level, our Digital Marketing Masterclass saw strong participation, including over 100 Sydney businesses and additional regional attendees, reinforcing Sydney's role as a hub for business learning. At the same time, we continued expanding support across all Sydney businesses through consultations, events, and outreach, ensuring strong engagement from businesses outside of the BIA's district. This reflects our commitment to truly town-wide economic development. Marine sector opportunities. This is an area of ongoing exploration. We've been connecting with regional partners like Coast and SÍP to establish if there are opportunities for collaboration. Most recently, we have joined the Chamber of Commerce's Marine Sector Committee and taken the lead in collecting data to help better understand the scope and economic impact of Sydney's marine industry. This work is helping to identify opportunities for alignment, improve awareness of available resources, and assess the potential for future initiatives such as a marine sector profile or blue economy strategy. As we move into year 3, our focus is on building on this momentum and continuing to strengthen services. Key priorities include aligning and improving access to online business resources between the town and BIA, continuing to explore marine sector opportunities, deepening engagement with businesses outside the BIA, delivering the next annual business snapshot report with expanded insights, and monitoring key indicators like business turnover and retention to guide future strategy. Overall, the goal is to continue evolving towards more proactive, coordinated, and data-driven support. I'd like to close by thanking the Council and staff for your continued partnership and support. Your investment has enabled us to expand services beyond the BIA boundary, deliver high-value programming to over 900 businesses, and strengthen Sydney's position as a resilient and business-supportive community. We value this strong working relationship and look forward to continuing this collaboration in the year ahead. Thank you again for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very Ms. Bobrowich for your presentation. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions or comments. I'll begin with Councillor Duff, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Bobrowich, for your presentation. As you heard in public participation tonight, there's some issues about occupancy and vacancies on Beacon Avenue specifically, and I know we've had a number of people close their businesses due to retirement and that. How is the BIA approaching this, or do you see it as an issue? I guess the first question, and then if you do, how are you approaching it?
Yeah, so we keep a close eye on commercial vacancies, and I think it's because there's a few high-profile and very visible businesses that have become vacant recently. We, of course, are checking in behind the scenes. I've had several people approach me asking about vacancies on Beacon Avenue in particular, so I think it's just a case at the moment. It's just a waiting game until people are filling those spaces. It's not of large concern. We have a very low commercial vacancy rate in Sydney, but of course we do continue to monitor and keep an eye on the movement there.
Thank you. And further to that, we have vacancies on outside of the BIA area. And you mentioned about the work the BIA is doing in the marine industry area. Can you address any of the vacancies we heard earlier this evening on Harbour Road, for example?
Our involvement with the Marine Committee with the Chamber of Commerce is really quite new. So at the moment we are literally in the process of helping to collect data on things like vacancies. So I'm sure we'll be able to speak to that a lot better once we've really gotten into that work. But yeah, that is definitely one of the goals of the work that we're doing. We're creating like a business directory, vacant spaces, and seeing how that's used.
Thank you. And thank you again, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was kind of, looking at the presentation, and there's some retail. I think there was a vet there. There's one of the boat, and I'm just wondering. I know you've had to put a lot of time probably into the marine, and that's been the focus. Has there been a focus on looking at like the conference kind of a business thing? Because I know we have a new hotel, and just by happenstance, you know, that's been what I've heard from people who've brought conferences here to the Mary Winspear, and then hearing from the BIA that they really thought the way that the BIA had helped bring that conference together for them and with their people was really excellent. And I felt like, wow, when I looked at this, that wasn't promoted as one of Sydney's main strengths, was being this really great place to bring professional conferences and organizations. And somebody else who was trying to bring in, you know, their professional organization for their, you know, biannual conference, and people were kind of skeptical because it was outside the usual core. But I was saying, no, I've heard such great things. Do you have plans for kind of promoting us as more of a conference?
So actually that's going to be Morgan Shaw. I'm not sure if she can come up and speak to that. That's a big focus of hers right now. And so not necessarily under the business development programming we have, but definitely within the scope of the BIA. So
Okay,
I'm not sure if...
A different section of the strategy. Great.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. My name is Morgan Shaw. I'm the Executive Director of the BIA, and I also manage the marketing functioning and MRDT as that's coming in. So conferences are a big part of kind of what makes Sydney exciting for people that are looking to visit. When it comes to those conferences, the Mary Winspear Centre is, of course, the hub as to where those are happening. At present, they're at capacities, so we're working with the Mary Winspear Centre in terms of what that can look like in shoulder season offerings, etc. But it's kind of on its way there. But it's exciting to see because we do see more and more conferences every year.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Novick, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for all you do for the business community. I know there's a lot of work and a lot of people to try and make happy. And I think one of the projects that you have that I guess is designed to make people happy is the Sydney Perk Pass. I have a couple of questions about that.
Yeah.
Number one, how many were distributed this year?
So we printed 500 passes.
That's the same as first year.
Yes, yeah, and they were all collected within 2 weeks this year, so they were definitely in demand.
So that was my next question, and which was what is the redemption percentage? And you say 100%.
Depending on that, because it has different offerings on there. So throughout the year, we'll see with each vendor how many were collected at their business.
Oh, I see. When
Yeah.
you say that they were 100% of them were given out.
Yes, correct.
Okay, redemptions, you're not sure yet.
Not yet. It will
takes
take till the end of
time.
the year, but we do track that.
And
Yeah.
do you, can you give us the figure for the first year?
For the first year, again, it varies on the different offerings, but the highest redemption was for Sydney scones, for instance, and 350 of those coupons were redeemed there. But, you know, it depends on the different offerings.
Great. So you're getting good value for that.
Yes, and the businesses who participate have been reporting, you know, they're very pleased. They're seeing lots of new faces through the doors and also returning customers. So that's a really great result.
Thank you. And so given the success, which seems obvious anyway, is there a plan or an opportunity to perhaps expand this program?
It obviously is an investment on the part of the BIA, so it just depends on, you know, we need to look at budgetary things and what we have planned for the year ahead and, you know, what's possible.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation. There were some neat things in the report that I was happy to see. I especially, one highlight for me was the mixer that you did for home-based businesses. And I think that was really important because I think, you know, when we think of business in Sydney, we think of downtown and Harbour Road and the West Side. But I have a sense that there's quite a few home-based businesses. Do you have a sense of how many home businesses that we have in Sydney, and whether from the mixer, whether you gathered any kind of input from them about things that are important for them or they need more support with?
Yeah, we currently on our records we have about 300 home-based businesses. They can be a little bit harder to track because sometimes people do them as, you know, like a side job and that kind of thing, so they're not always active. but that's how many business licenses we have active in that sector. The things that we hear a lot from home-based businesses is really just the opportunity to get out in the community and connect with other people. So for instance, the mixer that we hosted at Elective, the co-working space, and that was a really great opportunity for them to connect with other people in the same position as them working from home. Additionally, we see a really high turnout from home-based businesses that are educational workshops. So, you know, they're really looking again for opportunities to learn and to get out and to network as well. So we'll continue, obviously, inviting them to those things and hopefully doing some more targeted opportunities for them as well.
Yeah, that really surprised me, 300. I thought maybe, I don't know, there might be 100, but our total number of businesses is it around 1,000 or?
Yeah, just under. Obviously, it fluctuates kind of month by month, but right now we're sitting just under 1,000.
So that's like, and so those 300 are included in those?
Yes.
So like a third of our businesses?
Like current records, as I said, you know, sometimes people aren't really very active, but they just hold the business license. But
no, that's really, that's really good to know. On the topic of like different types of businesses, I think it's great that you've got a newsletter going out to all the businesses. So do we now have a list of all of our businesses with their email addresses and their locations and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we keep a very well updated database of all businesses in Sydney using the business license system.
Does that list also, we had talked before about being able to break it down like by sector or business location, like how many businesses on Harbour Road, how many businesses, you know, on the west side, are we able to kind of generate information on that?
Yeah, we keep all of that information, are able to break that out,
So that would be cool. I would be interested in seeing, like, next reporting cycle, whatever, to get a better appreciation of how much business we have in different areas. So that would be something that would be good for me. I also really like the format and the information that was provided in the business snapshot. I think that's good for us as a council to know, also for local business and also for potential investors. The one thing I was hoping we could maybe see a bit more of in the future, again, is that more information on those different business sectors and locations. So like in terms of the business openings and closings, that's really good information to have in terms of how are things going with business. But it would be really great if we could have a breakdown for that, like for Harbour Road and for the west side as well. And as we know, like during COVID, that different parts of our business community were impacted in different ways. And so having an understanding of what's going on in the different business sectors, I think would be really helpful for us. And I guess also related to that, the business growth and the primary customer base as well. So I know what generally we're talking about 65% our customers are local residents. I don't know for sure, but I'm wondering, I just get a sense of having talked to different businesses at Breakfast Club, for example, that they seem to have their customers sort of further afield.
Right.
So, you know, not necessarily Sidney or North Saanich residents, but possibly on the mainland, other parts of Canada, and also a lot of international business as well. So I think getting kind of a feel for what that looks like could be kind of just help round out the picture a bit more. Okay. One thing that we had talked about in the past in our ECDEV strategy was the diversification of our tourism sector. And I believe that the marine, the Chamber's Marine Committee is kind of, I think, sort of on that and talk to you about that.
Yes.
But the other one that's been a real interest of mine was
accessible tourism, which is developed as a real niche with Destination BC. And I was thinking more of that recently, knowing that the new Marriott Hotel is going to be opening up. And I know that members of our accessibility committee actually provided input to the hotel at the time in terms of how to develop or features that they would like to see in those accessible rooms. So now that they do have accessible rooms, and we have the most accessible, one of the few fully accessible airports in the country, we have a really nice accessible waterfront, a really nice accessible washroom, a Shaw Center, and a number of, so I'm just wondering if that's something that you might be thinking about, maybe tapping into that tourism market, if that's something we might be thinking about.
Yeah, again, I think that's one of our goals also, is to promote accessible tourism. And so now that those amenities are being presented, it just it provides a nice picture to be able to present to people.
Yeah, great. Okay, that's good. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other speakers, I want to thank both yourself, Natalie, and Morgan for attending and preparing such an informative package for Council. That's also a part of the public record by virtue of being in our agenda. And thank you for the way that the business development program has evolved in just a year. It's expanded. It's more in depth, and we wish you continued success in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to be now turning to Section 8, which is a number of bylaws, 4 of which are coming back to Council. Those would be the first, the first 5 would be coming back to Council. They were all considered coming out of the budget process at a previous meeting and given readings, and we're looking to consider adoption for those. So I'll begin with 8A, which is bylaw number 2307, the collection and disposal of refuse, amendment number 2. Councillor Duck?
I move that the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And we have 8B, bylaw number 2308, water utility rates and charges, amendment number 5. Councillor Duck?
I move the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Thank you to the same movers. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And 8C is bylaw number 2309, the water parcel tax, amendment number 1.
I move the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. 8D is bylaw number 2310, the sewer utility rates and charges.
I move the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Thank you to the movers. Those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. And 8E is bylaw number 2311, the sewer parcel tax.
I move the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. And new on this agenda is bylaw number 2314, the intercommunity business license. I'll turn to our Director of Community Planning, Mr. Newcomb. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the town issues many different types of business licenses. You've got your standard sort of brick and mortar licenses. About 20 years ago, we started issuing what's called intermunicipal business licenses. And so that's an agreement with other CRD municipalities to sort of lower barriers to businesses that operate across jurisdictions. And in 2019, the town signed on to the intercommunity business license agreement. And that was really an initiative of the province to lower barriers across southern Vancouver Island for businesses that are more mobile and are operating intermunicipally in that broader area. So the 2019 agreement that we signed was accompanied by a bylaw that was adopted at the time. And over the last year or so, I'd say that municipalities involved in that have gone through a bit of a process to update that bylaw. Just more housekeeping tweaks, and so that's what this bylaw tonight is about. There's a couple of minor changes, but really it's about making that bylaw just work a little bit better. And there originally was intended to be an agreement to go along with that bylaw, It was never signed, and so there's agreement coming forward now with the amending bylaw that the town will need to sign as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. If not, we can proceed with 4 separate motions. The first 3 would be separate readings, and then the second recommendation. Councillor Duck, please.
I move that the intercommunity business license number 2314 be given first reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor? That carries unanimous.
I move second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is where we normally have any discussion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, just want to thank staff for bringing this forward. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carries unanimous.
I move third reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. And the second recommendation, please.
That the intercommunity business license bylaw agreement be approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to add that I think this is a valuable asset, as we heard in earlier from the BIA report. There are a number of home-based businesses, 300 of them, and predominantly these businesses are probably working across the communities that are making up the CRD. So I think this is a valuable asset to our businesses that are located here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I need to call the question? I do. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, mind was moving ahead to the next item. We're now, next item on our business is under council reports. Under 11A, I'll turn to Councillor Gurnett, our liaison to both the Sidney Business Improvement Area Society and the Shaw Centre for the Salish Sea.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with the Salish Sea Centre, and I attended the latest board meeting on March 31st. Visitors to the centre from June 1st of 2025 to March 28th, 2026, 68,314, and this is a 4% increase over last year. There were 6,972 visitors to the centre over the 16 days of spring break, which compares to the 8,142 last year. But overall, this is the second highest attendance they've had over that during that period of time. So still a very successful 2 weeks. Net income to January 31st with the Town of Sidney operational grant funding and other contributed revenue is $22,000. That for the plan forecasted for the year was $20,000, so they are on target for what they were planning on for the full year, which is another 3 months away from reporting of this. There's just been over $40,000 in capital investment to date, with the bulk being for the wheelchair lift, and I'm happy to let everybody know it's now functional. So if people who have wheelchairs and other accessibility needs have a way to get up to the heartbeat inside the center. So, and it works great. I watched as people went up. Also, Chuck, the latest octopus ambassador, was returned to the ocean week of March 31st up island, and a smooth transition to the water. There was a little mini video we could watch. And there's an unnamed ambassador that's currently habituating at the center. And finally, the center will be hosting a fundraiser on May 9th, a magical night at the Salish Sea Center, and this event will feature a magician. Tickets can be purchased on their website, or you can, if you can find a local board member up until Friday, they have some paper tickets as well, if that's your preference, just to help support the operations of the center. And if there's no questions, I have the next report.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. Are there any questions for our liaison? Seeing none, please continue.
So, I guess a little ironically, I prepared a report for the SPIA, not knowing they were going to be on the agenda tonight. So I did speak with them before to make sure I wasn't going to do any overlap. I attended the AGM on March 25th. There were no new nominations from the floor, so the 5 returning members that stepped forward to continue were acclaimed, and so the board will remain the same. So in a lot of senses, that's a good thing. There will be continuity for the year to come. Revenues and expenses for the year were even, resulting in a break-even year, which is the aim for not-for-profits. And overall, the society remains in a healthy and strong financial position when considering assets, balances versus liabilities. And I brought this one specifically for Councillor Novak, the MRDT hotel tax you were asking about last time I did a report. It began in August and they started receiving funds in the fall. And at the end of the year, there was $173,000 collected. Just under $15,000 has been spent, leaving a restricted balance of $158,000. This will fund the website, assist with the SBI mission of promoting foot traffic, and its focus will be on tourism, marketing, and destination attraction. And just to remind Council of what our role is in this is that we along with the CRD provided a letter of support when they went through this process with the government. But at this point now, this is an agreement between the hoteliers, local hoteliers, and the SBA, which is their chosen mechanism. And the annual report is now on the website. Looking at the annual snapshot, as staff or council now has it in this package. Not sure if members of the public have had a chance to look at it, but I thought I would point a few highlights from it. Pedestrian counts in 2025 reached approximately 2.19 million compared to 1.99 million in 2024. As some have mentioned before, there are 50 new businesses have opened in 2025, and the vacancy rate sat at 3.2%. There was a survey done amongst the businesses in the community, and of those who responded, 4 in 10 businesses in Sydney have been operating for over 10 years, while over 35% have opened within the past 5 years. So there's a real consistency, but also there's quite a bit of desire for the people to want to set up shop here. So this is a good positive thing. And as mentioned by Councillor O'Keefe, more than 65% of the businesses rely on local residents as their primary customer base. And I think this was no more evident than during the pandemic, which is why a lot of our businesses were actually able to survive because of our community and how supportive of they are of our local businesses. The biggest challenges faced were increased operating costs, changes in customer spending, and staffing. And interestingly enough for me, the two that were the lowest were tariffs and parking. And I would have not thought that would have been the case, but that, according to the survey respondents, that's the way they provided their list. And hotel occupancy rose from 65% in 2024 to 80% in 2025. And again, I'll be interested to see what if any, impact the new Marriott Hotel has when it opens for 2026 on occupancy rates. And I believe the grand opening is May 4th. So those are keeping track of such things. And that's all I have for today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that full update. I'll turn to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Just a comment on the, in regards to the tariffs didn't seem to be an issue. I think you would find that maybe they weren't an issue for downtown businesses, but just what we've heard at Sydney Breakfast Club from those businesses on the west side and Harbour Road. So those involved in the manufacturing sector that are kind of more dependent on bringing in big pieces of equipment and metals and materials, they have found that tariffs are a bigger impact for them. So again, it's why it would be good to be able to have breakdown of the, how these things affect different business sectors.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe.
Just to point out that, of course, these are the results based on the survey. So if people over there in those industries aren't supplying the information, that can't be part of what the results are showing. So, I mean, there's another way maybe to capture that data, but in terms of what's in here and what they have based on the survey, that's what's presented. So.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for the question, Councillor. Thanks for the reply. And I'll turn to Councillor Duncan.
I might just add regarding the tariffs, because I work for a company that does manufacturing, and how we saw it play out is it could be kind of neutralizing each other. We onboarded most of our supply things into BC because of COVID, so that turned out to work out really well for us. And so for businesses that are then exporting a product, because the tariffs were always known to be coming, there was always saber rattling first. A lot of people started buying large bulk orders ahead of time. So for some people, they might have found that the tariffs worked out for them because it actually boosted people doing advance orders. So it might have ended up just being something that was kind of neutral. And that, if you're importing large amounts of sheet metal or something, that you would be one of the few industries that was really struck. But for other people, it just kind of ended up balancing out.
Great. Thanks, Councillor. Okay, we'll move on to our next item. We're now under committee reports, and the first under 12A is we're receiving the minutes of the Advisory Planning Commission from their meeting of April 7th. And I'll turn to Councillor Duck, our liaison to the APC, if you have any high-level comments you wish to provide.
Thank you, Mayor. It was there was only one item on the agenda for the APC to discuss, and that was the recommendation that's before you tonight. And they gave it some healthy discussion over a couple of hours and looked over the different aspects that were presented to them within the report from staff, as well as the proponent providing information on that. I would add that one of the first things the chair did was invite the liaison, myself, to provide any feedback from council relative to thoughts that were at council. So I took the opportunity to provide some of the views that council had to them. The recommendations there, I'm also able to provide sort of a record of decision as if that is of interest to council members. And open to any questions at this point prior to the recommendation coming forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duck, for that. Just as an introduction to what is a very long recommendation from the APC Advisory Planning Commission, I'll note that, as we're aware, but I want to note that there are 3 applications. There's a zoning amendment application, there's the development variance permit application, and there's the development permit application. The recommendation is to approve those 3 applications subject to what it says are the following conditions, and there's an extensive list of conditions. Council, we know that the first piece, or the first part of the recommendation, is that staff prepare a zoning amendment bylaw in relation to the zoning amendment application, and that the bylaw be brought before council for consideration. I'm going to ask that council consider that recommendation, so the introduction and that first piece as a separate motion. If council chooses not to support that, everything following that is it doesn't apply. And if it were not to succeed, if the motion is made and it were not succeed, we would then have to consider an alternate recommendation, because we haven't dealt with the application. We're just not agreeing to approve it. So are there any questions on that process? And then once we're through that first recommendation, if it passes, then I would ask that, turning to Councillor Duck, that you read in the conditions 2 all the way through till 7F, and that if any council member wanted to remove one of those conditions for a separate discussion and a separate vote, we could do that. Or if council, for any reason, wanted to make an amendment to any of those conditions, we could do so at that time. So, Councillor Duck, I might ask if you might read the preamble, or sorry, from the recommendation and just the first part.
Thank you, Mayor. I so move that the zoning amendment application number RZ100110, development variance permit application number DV100369, and development permit application number DP100851 for 9972 3rd Street be approved, subject to the following condition: that staff prepare a zoning amendment bylaw in relation to the zoning amendment application number RZ100110, and that the bylaw be brought before council for consideration.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded by Councillor Novick. I'll turn to those movers first, please.
Yeah, as a liaison to the APC and the council meeting, I can see where you're going with this, because there's some significant review that the APC did, but I think it's preeminent upon it, that bylaw being in place for them to move forward with those changes, and I think it's appropriate to give consideration to the zoning bylaw change before anything else is addressed, both for the proponent and those that may have concerns about it, because that's sort of the juxtaposition of where things are, and it will give some direction as to what the next step is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Novick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a lot to add. We've had a lot of discussion on this. I believe that the APC has given this some serious thought, and these recommendations appear to be reasonable. So I'm happy to support this and see this project move forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A question through you to staff. So we had previously talked about giving consideration to that RM7, changing it to an RM7R to preserve the rental tenure. So do we need to provide any direction on that tonight, or is that going to, can we do that at a later date?
Mr. Newcomb, please.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. So the intent after this, if it does get adopted by council, staff would prepare the bylaw and bring it forward to the next council meeting or the one after that with an accompanying staff report. And that would introduce the bylaw and speak to some of the details in the bylaw and give council an opportunity to address that then.
Okay, so we don't need to give direction on that now then?
No, we just need direction to bring the bylaw forward
Okay.
at this time, yeah.
If I may just interject for a moment,
Okay.
and that process wouldn't impact in any way these particular applications.
Which process, sorry?
Sorry, the applications that we're considering this evening.
The bylaw would be drafted in such a way that it would be in support of the resolution that's ultimately adopted here tonight. If that,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Keefe, you had the floor.
Yeah, so just clarification. So we would go ahead and rezone the property to RM7, and then we would have to have a separate rezoning process for RM7R. Is there a reason why we just, if we're gonna rezone it, just go straight to rezoning it RM7R?
Through the mayor to Councillor Keefe, no, it would be a single zoning bylaw, and it would all be taken care of within that one bylaw.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett, Councillor Garnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through your staff, because I don't think we have an RM7R, do we? I'm confused.
Through the mayor to Councillor Garnett, no, we don't.
Okay.
So once staff get direction to prepare a bylaw, we would then look at, a number of options for the best way to structure. There might be some options in there that could be discussed with council, and so all that information would come forward following the direction to prepare the bylaw. Yeah, so it could be, there's options like CD zones or creation of new zones or using the existing zone in the bylaw.
Right.
So those are the things that staff would look at once that direction's provided.
And just to be clear, because I know the answer, but I think it's for the public, there is no public hearing for this, correct?
No, that's correct. It's 100% residential, and it's consistent with the official community plan. So the Local Government Act prohibits public hearing in that case. Yeah.
So if this particular motion passes and staff's given direction to prepare it, you prepare it, it comes back. So at this point, it's just going through the process, hasn't been approved, still has to come back to council for approval. If it is approved, so that you were changing it to an RM7 or whatever zone staff comes back with, different from the two that are there currently, that would allow for the rest of the recommendation from APC to happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have to. I guess it's where I'm seeking some clarification. So
it would keep everything moving concurrently. The APC recommendation gets, theoretically adopted here tonight, and that sets the stage for the DVP to move forward, as well as puts the development permit ready for approval once the DVP comes back for approval, and then the zoning bylaw moves forward at the same time. So we're all trying to tie it together at the end, and so the process sort of happens at different times, and it gets initiated at different times, but ultimately at the end gets tied together from a timeline process perspective.
if I may, Mayor, so I guess what I'm seeking to know here is if this motion passes and the following motions do not, does that still, given the zoning change, give the applicant the opportunity to, I'm just thinking in terms of the options that were presented at APC, option one, option two. Option two was the one presented. Would it allow for the ability for the applicant to provide a different alternative than what's presented in the rest of the recommendations?
Yes, essentially what council would be saying in that situation is we'd like to see a use of something like this type in the zone that gets brought forward, but something in the development permit or the variance permit needs to be adjusted, and the expectation is that something different would come forward under that new zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I,
please go ahead.
yeah, no, thank you for your response. I appreciate that. So I guess I've been conflicted on this, but given that parameters that staff have provided, I think it's a reasonable, given the rental potential that has been mentioned in perpetuity by the applicant. But more importantly for me, even though there isn't a public hearing, this is going to take some time for staff to work on and come back to council with. This will provide the public with an opportunity to weigh in on it before we make a final decision. And so in that sense, I will support it just because it allows that opportunity for the public. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So I just want to provide perhaps a little clarity, and that is that this motion is, as it is on the floor with the preamble and part one, is approving the three applications, including the rezoning application, subject to the zoning amendment bylaw coming back to council at a future meeting, whether it's at the next council meeting or not. And as Councillor Gurnett has, through his questions, has indicated that it comes when that zoning bylaw comes back, when staff bring it back, council will actually make the decision on the zoning bylaw at that time. So we're not making a decision on the zoning bylaw this evening. We're making a decision on requesting the staff, directing staff to bring back the bylaw for consideration. And again, as Councillor Gurnett and Mr. Newcomb indicated, there's because of provincial legislation, a public hearing would not be held in this instance. Mr. Newcomb, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to that, so the direction to bring the zoning bylaw would be provided potentially. And I think important to note too that neither the development permit or the development permit would be approved here tonight either. The development variance permit would be moved forward to public notification, and the development permit would be sort of given tentative approval subject to the approval of the development variance permit. So it's essentially moving the project, the application forward to the next stage rather than issuing any kind of final approvals at this point.
Sorry, and the development, consideration of the development permit application is subject to both the variance application being approved and the zoning bylaw being approved.
Typically that type of language is written into the zoning bylaw so that they all sort of come together at the end and get approved concurrently.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gurnett, you had the floor.
Thank you.
Okay. Other discussion? I just want to take a moment to indicate my support for this process moving forward. I want to thank APC, our citizen-appointed advisory commission, for the work that they did for this. Staff provided, as usual, a more detailed report for APC, and I was able to watch most of the APC meeting and see the discussion that was held, and look forward to the next steps in the process. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. So, Councillor Duck, if you could now just read from number 2 through 7.
Thank you, Mayor, and bear with me. It's a lengthy bit of reading, so I will start from number 2 on. That owners and tenants in occupation of the property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 9972 3rd Street be notified regarding development variance application number DV 100369 to decrease the minimum front yard setback to relax requirements for rooftop access seating and to increase the maximum permitted height of a rooftop access structure can project, and that any written correspondence received before to council at the time of consideration of the approval of the variance. 3, that development permit application number DP 100851 to approve the form and character of a 4-story multi-unit residential building containing a total of 75 apartment dwelling units be brought forward before council for consideration of approval if the council adopts the zoning amendment bylaw and authorizes the issuance of the development variance permit. 4, that council approve the removal of 1 Monterey cypress tree number 951 on the west side of 9972 3rd Street, subject to the condition that the tree not be removed until after the building permit has been issued for the proposed development. 5, that as conditions of approval of the zoning amendment application number RZ100110, the property owner shall, prior to issuance of a building permit, A, register a restrictive covenant on the title for the property, prohibiting the future owner or strata council from passing any bylaws that may restrict occupancy of the building based on age, and B, register a restrictive covenant on title acknowledging the details and maintenance schedule required for the on-site stormwater management system. 6, that the ramp to the underground parking lot be shifted north to allow more space for protected root zones of the cherry trees of the property to the south, 9942 3rd Street. 7, that as conditions of approval of development permit application number DP 100851, the property owner shall, prior to the issuance of a building permit, A, address design guidelines number 24.4.9, shading of windows, 25.3.9, bicycle parking access, 25.3.13, emphasis of main entrance, 25.3.24, 4th Street streetscape, 25.4.14, overlook, 25.4.21-22, variation of in hard surfacing, 25.6.20, incorporate play area to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. B, install tree protection fencing around all on-site and off-site protected trees to the satisfaction of the town's arborist to remain in place until such time that all construction of the property is complete, and ensure that any necessary work inside the tree protection area tree protection fencing be undertaken under the direct supervision of a certified consulting arborist. C, ensure that a certified arborist be on site at time of excavation near the identified root zone, and that the town's arborist be allowed to supervise and provide direction to the excavation of the root zones and pruning of the 6 cherry trees and remaining 2 Monterey cypress trees in accordance with an implementation plan approved by the town's arborist and under the direct supervision of a certified consulting arborist. D, obtain a tree removal permit for the removal of 1 protected Monterey cypress tree, number 951, and a pruning permit for the 2 protected Monterey cypress trees. E, pay to the town a security in the amount of $10,000 per protected tree located on the subject property, adjacent properties, and on the municipal boulevard with critical root zones that are in the proximity to the proposed driveways and parking areas that are impacted by this development, to ensure that they are not damaged during site development as per tree preservation bylaw number 2138, section 11.10. And F, pay to the town a deposit in the amount of 115% of the estimated cost to complete the hard and soft landscaping for the development.
Second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duck, and we have it seconded by Councillor Novick. I'll turn to you if you have some oxygen left to motivate.
So yes, as you can see, this was not the recommendation that was put forward by staff. It was amended by APC members at the time of the meeting after a fairly lengthy discussion. And as part of that, I'd just like to read in some of the comments of the record of decision, because it does illustrate the extent they went through and to evaluate this development. APC thought the development in general was well designed, but the 4th Street elevation requires further attention. That's relative to the appearance of the 4th Street elevation as part of being 4th Street being more visually pleasing, I guess is the idea, as it is part of a streetscape and not the back side of a building. APC discussed the removal of 1 Monterey cypress tree number 951 on the west side of 9972 3rd Street thoroughly, and supported the additional tree planting and canopy vision for the property. And within this, they looked at the fact that most of the canopy of that middle tree to be removed was overshadowed by the other 2, and saw that there it could be accommodated as directed by the proponent. APC, together with the applicant, thoroughly explored alternatives to the driveway and surface parking. This was relative to how that could be moved around, and they did look at different options, including many of the options we'd seen before. The applicant indicated their willingness to shift the ramp to the underground parking area to provide additional space for the cherry trees on the adjacent property, and I think you heard the applicant tonight say they would do their best there, and that if there was any damage to those trees, they would replace them as part of that. APC stressed the importance of the engineering of the floating driveway to accommodate trucks and other large vehicles. And this was in perspective that floating driveways have been well proven in other applications, as many of the members of APC brought forward. And the indication was that the surface should be prepared for moving trucks, garbage trucks, recycling trucks, that kind of vehicle that's coming across that entranceway as well to pick up and drop off things. And lastly, there was a suggestion that all exterior entrances, including ground floor patios, should be made accessible by ramp. And that was also identified as something that needs to be done. So all in all, I thought APC gave it a very in-depth discussion and study of this, and adapted the recommendations to interpret what they saw as the best form and character for this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Before going to Councillor Novick as the seconder, there's a lot of detail within these recommendations. And I'll just turn to colleagues if there are any questions from staff on any clarifications or impacts of any of the particular conditions. Councillor O'Keefe and then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. First of all, in regards to the cherry trees, so I see in the recommendations that we're going to shift the underground parking north to give them more room for their roots. And then there's talk about installing tree protection for the on-site and off-site protected trees. Are the cherry trees, are they considered protected trees? So would they be included in that protective fencing?
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. So there's different types of protected trees. There's some are protected by species, some are protected by size. There's a category of protected tree that are protected by right of being planted as part of a development permit. And so these cherry trees fall into that category. They were planted as part of the development permit for the adjacent property. So they are protected, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So they'll have the protective fencing. Okay, that's great. Other thing, I don't know if this is for staff or for Mr. Duck. In the records of decision, so they talked about things like the 4th Street elevation requires further attention, comments about the importance of the floating driveway, and suggestion about the ramps to the ground floor patio. So APC sort of made those as just comments, but I don't see that they're necessarily, I didn't see them incorporated into recommendations. So are those things that staff would make note of and discuss with the developer, or should we be including those as other specific recommendations?
Councillor Duck or Mr. Newcomb? Mr. Newcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I personally was not at the APC meeting, so I'm not quite sure that I have that level of detail around some of these. I would say, though, if they're not specifically called out in the 7A, so the design guidelines section, and council's specifically concerned about something, then that would be the place to add them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because for what you're referring to, you're referring to the ones that are subject to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services.
Yeah, I saw those, and then there was some other things APC mentioned, so I didn't know if it was APC's intention to include those, or whether there was just not enough support to include those.
So I will add, sorry, that some of the items you mentioned may not be addressed in the design guidelines. And so that might be, a conversation with the applicant, or it could also be dealt with, depending on the scale of the request. It could also be a condition of the rezoning as well if,
okay.
yeah, if
Okay.
it's outside the scope of other bylaws or guidelines that the
Okay.
town has. Yeah.
Sure, thanks.
Councillor Duck, please.
As staff just noted, that was outside the scope of APC to address, so they brought it forward as a comment in terms of the record of decision, but was not part of their recommendation to be moved by council.
Great. Councillor Duncan, please.
Yeah, thank you. Question for you to staff about the recommendation, the design guideline for 25.6.20, incorporate play area. I don't recall ever discussing that on council or seeing that in the design, and I assume it's because it's just the site's kind of jam-packed. If this is included in there, does that mean that to the satisfaction of the Director of Development, they look at it and it can't be fit, and since we never discussed it on council, they can waive that? Or by having this in here, would this suddenly become a new requirement that the developer would have to fit onto the site?
Through the mayor to Councillor Duncan, I would say generally the intent would be to try and get something on the property that would, meet that requirement. It is possible. It has been the case that it's just not practically possible when you look at the various issues at play, and so it has been waived in the past as well. it's one of those things that you don't know about until you actually get in and sort of look at the design possibilities. Generally, I would say we're able to incorporate some level of that aspect, but quite often it may be a little less than what, say, APC might have expected as well, just because of the design constraints.
Councillor Duck, if you wish to add.
Yes, so I will add to that because it was discussed by APC in terms of that element and addressed by both the proponent and staff as a worthy addition, but not entirely probable, just given the constraints of the space. To that point, the proponent also noted that there is a park and development 2 blocks down the road. So, you know, maybe there was potential for fees that could be put into that park there. But that was sort of the initial thought was, like, how can we incorporate it within this? And certainly staff and the proponent said it can be incorporated, but what sort of size does it take on? And I think the idea that was put forward by staff actually was, you know, sort of a hopscotch trail down the sidewalk at the side of the building. So that was kind of the limitations of that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan, anything further?
No, would this
Questions?
be no question.
Okay, yeah. We're going to stay with questions just for a moment and then turn to the seconder for further motivation, or to continue motivation. Councillor Rentoul, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, through you to Councillor Duck, and I know when we received the minutes earlier, by nature of them being included, the APC minutes, that is, that we didn't get to ask questions about those, but if I may, through you to Councillor Duck, you noted the record of decision. The third bullet spoke to the discussion APC had around the driveway and surface parking. I didn't note anything specifically in the record of discussion or the recommendations that you kindly took us through with regards to the parking garage. And so I feel like council had on a couple of occasions kind of zeroed in on 3rd Street versus 4th Street for access to the parking garage. And I recollect the applicant's position that it related to elevation of 4th Street and 3rd Street being more favorable, and that it would have limited perhaps underground parking if it were to have accessed from 4th. Was there discussion of that nature at all at APC and or around the prospect of parking variances if that access and egress were to be relocated to 4th?
It certainly was, to direct answer your question, and similar discussion around the elevation difference between access from 4th Street versus 3rd Street, requiring a much shallower and loss of parking spaces. In the opening of APC, I did present that council was interested in the potential of parking variances. That wasn't pursued by either APC or the proponent and looking at it. Once the angle of entrance from 4th Street was kind of eliminated, was back to the 3rd Street entrance, and that was looked on several ways, which ultimately meant moving it slightly farther north to accommodate with the cherry trees, but it was also evaluated for an entrance to the other side of the building on the north end of the building versus the south end of the building. And the proponent provided rationale as to why that was, and the loss of units within the current design, and the nature of the layout of the actual property being relatively restrictive to shifting the underground parking entrance to a specific zone, and limited that and providing enough access in and out, even to the point where there was discussion of, you know, could that be a one-way in, one-way out entrance, and thereby providing less impact on the adjacent property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, Councillor Novak, you as the seconder, if you wish to motivate.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have anything to add. The discussion has covered just about everything I can think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further motivation? Councillor Garnett, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. First, just and I did also watch the entire meeting. I just wanted to point something out that I witnessed during the meeting, and not so much for this, but moving forward, I did note there were a couple of members that seemed to have a misunderstanding around staff recommendation. they mentioned that option 2 staff recommendations, and those were just next step discussion points. The actual recommendation was option 1, and it seemed that there was a little confusion around that among some members. And I don't know if that would have impacted the decision at all at the end of the day, but I think going forward for other meetings, I think it needs to be more clear. There needs to be more clarity for the members that, when there's a recommendation, it'll actually say recommendation. So if there's alternatives, it doesn't mean there's recommendations there. That's the starting point. Yeah, as I said, I'll support going forward in terms of the variance. I'm really struggling with the overall, I've struggled with the process. We sent a directive in September asking for options to come back and a traffic study. Traffic study was done. There was a second Arborist report done. The presentation in February, to my satisfaction, was really not great. And it was mentioned at the APC meeting that they could have done better. They actually acknowledged that. I'm not 100% sure that there was ever an intention to come with an alternate plan. I think at the start, this was supposed to be a condominium building, switch to rentals. I'm not sure. I think that may have more to do with economics, and condos just are kind of bottoming out. And so there are lots of incentives from the governments to help with purpose-built rental buildings. And so that might have been one of the considerations given. Having watched the meeting, and it seemed that our tree preservation bylaw, there was a lot of discussion around it, and it seemed like the applicant kind of was dismissive of it for my liking, and also of staff's applying it to the proposal. And that troubled me a little bit, just in the way the wording was at the meeting. And using terms like a tree's modestly healthy or it's a non-native species, it's just a way to devalue the tree, to be honest. Thankfully we don't remove humans that are modestly healthy. I mean, it's a bad comparison, I know, but I'm thinking like this is modestly healthy. It still means healthy. And when I look at there was a comment in the meeting about this will increase the tree canopy even though you remove the one tree in the middle. Well, there's going to be trees planted anyways, whatever you design there. So the tree canopy is going to be increased. So it's a little disingenuous to say the tree canopy will be increased because we're removing a tree. It's still going to be increased. The movement of the 3rd Street driveway to the north was mentioned 500 millimeters, I heard during the meeting, and that's about 1.64 feet. Mr. Simon, who has come to multiple meetings talking about the cherry trees, and rightly so, because it actually during the presentation at the start of the APC meeting, the cherry trees weren't even mentioned. Like they weren't even, until APC brought it up, it wasn't even a discussion point. And I was glad to see APC did that. There was a really fulsome discussion around every aspect of this development. But the fact that wasn't even brought in the presentation indicates that it wasn't really a concern. And given that a member of the public had raised it as a concern, I would have hoped that would have been addressed more prudently through the discussion period. And these apparently are quite sturdy plants, and they can have root zones to a certain degree moved away or taken away, and they'll survive, hopefully. I've been advised by staff these trees are approximately 18 years old, so they may not be great in size, but they're not young. So, replacing them can be done. I think there's one tree that has been replaced, if I'm not mistaken. The one furthest to the west, I've noticed is a new tree that's been replaced. But these cherry trees they're important to the neighbors in 1942, and I can see why. There's privacy and screening there from these trees, and if they get destroyed and have to be replanted, that's lost for them. So I think it's important as a developer or an applicant that you acknowledge that aspect of the concerns of neighbors that you're working around and with, and I don't think that was adequately done through any presentation, actually, in terms of that particular residence. And I don't know. I'm struggling to understand why. And Councillor Rintoul touched on it, and we brought it up before. Why the response about the parking variance, the fact that there was a feeling it wouldn't go over well here. And yes, we do have a community that's averse to parking variances for good reason. But as staff has said before when talking about developments, there's always a trade-off. And I think it's a lost opportunity here, and even a failure that it wasn't given to council as a consideration, and more importantly, it wasn't given to the community as a consideration. And where it may not have worked in other communities and other projects that the applicant has done, I would argue that Sidney is an incredibly unique community. It's different in so many ways, and one of the ways it's very unique is that the great many people that live here actually care about the tree canopy. And they actually care about boulevard trees. These are half on, half off, but they are essentially boulevard trees. And you can see that because we've gotten multiple emails, multiple letters from residents before it even came to us. So you can tell that the community is really concerned about our future and what it's going to look like without trees, even though there will be some added, but those will take years to add benefit to the community and to our tree canopy. And as far as the housing needs assessment was also mentioned at the meeting, and I think while it is great that you're going to do rental tenure and it's going to be in perpetuity, I think that's great. It's what we need. We have approved 380 rental units in this community in 3 different developments, and there is a small affordable portion in one of them. The housing needs assessment, when we talk about it, what's often overlooked by applicants such as yourself that come in here is they tend to not mention the one thing that's the most important need we have, which is below market and near market. And that always seems to get kind of forgotten, and sadly, rather, from my take. And we've had some communication from the public saying that, if we lose a couple of trees, it's okay because we're going to get much needed affordable housing. That's not happening here. These are market units. There'll be market rents. So there's no affordability component. I want the public to be aware of that if they're following this meeting or looking into this. So what it comes down to is, do we want to remove something that removes GHGs from our community and replace it with something that allows, or is a single biggest contributor to GHGs in our community? And there's a certain irony and absurdity to that for me, that we're putting in a driveway in a surface parking lot and removing a tree to allow for it. It's a challenging decision. And as I would preferably, option 1, I think staff, I agree with them wholeheartedly. I think it should have been a redesign. But where we are, there's a lot of what's recommended here I don't support and I don't go along with. But I do, as a person sitting here reflecting what the community want to hear from the community. And there will be a process. This is going to take a while, as you've seen the way it's laid out. So if you're here in the audience today and you know people, please get them to respond to council. Get them to provide information and input. It's really important that the community has an ultimate say when something like this happens, because we've heard over and over again, these particular trees are what we call quality specimen. I would call them significant, generational, iconic even. And I think if that is what the community wants, then they should weigh in and say, we might consider a parking variance. If that means we can protect the trees and we can do something in a redesign that actually helps the cherry trees on the other side and provide a green space on this. Although there is a park in close proximity, the OCP speaks to green spaces on our multi-residential developments, and the community was overwhelming in that through the process. So please, those who are here tonight and those who hear this message, I will support this going forward only because I want the opportunity for all of the community to provide input. And I'm hoping that, beyond all hopes, that people will provide that input. And that'll give council a really good idea of where everybody really stands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got some hesitation with respect to this as well, but as I look at it, with the information and the review that the Advisory Planning Commission has done and the fulsome discussion that they had as evidenced in the minutes and by the report from Councillor Duck, I'm appreciative of that look that the community members on our APC have taken and the recommendations that they've come forward with. So that I certainly take a sense of ease with regard to that. I asked the question around the congestion on 3rd versus 4th. It sounds like ABC heard the same answers that council did. To that end, early in the process, council asked the applicant to go out and obtain a local traffic study on that area with respect to that, with that question in mind. They did that. With our appreciation, and came back to say that this is going to have a minimal impact on the traffic flow on 4th, given the size of this undertaking, the fact that it's split over 2 parking lots as opposed to just one. And so I take some comfort in knowing that it's been assessed professionally and that is the feedback. And I think if we did pursue variances or insist on variances for parking, we may have concerns from the community then that these congested streets are just going to see additional parking on them. And that's one of the nice components to this, I'll confess, is that it does provide for parking for every unit. So again, difficult for me to really argue and continue to stress that 4th Street versus 3rd Street be addressed further by the applicant. And I'm appreciative of the commitment for this to be a rental undertaking. And I get what Councillor Garnett has said about the number of rentals we've approved, but you know, the location of this in the town center, I think, is appealing and appeals to perhaps a convenience piece. I get that they're not going to be geared to income. They're not going to be as accessible to many people as we would like to see. That there'll be market rental, but the location lends itself, I think, to a convenience in Sydney, and hopefully some people will choose to reside there and forego a vehicle and be able to live in pedestrian-friendly Sydney. So, despite my personal concerns and thoughts on this, I feel like the applicant's done a good job in terms of addressing the concerns to council with regard to the traffic study that they undertook. And again, my appreciation to the APC for their fulsome discussion and recommendations. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. I'll support this going forward for now, but I continue to have reservations. I did watch the full 2 hours at APC and really appreciative of the amount of time that they put into this. Some takeaways for me, though, from the developers' side is, I'm still disappointed. I don't get the sense that there was a real effort to come up with anything different. And just what I took from the discussion, there was a fair amount of discussion on the developers' side, reminding APC that, the provincial government has housing targets in place, that there's a hierarchy that should be respected. And my takeaway from that was that the feeling was that housing should come before trees, and this is just one tree. And so, the impression I had was there was a somewhat, maybe dismissive tone towards the treatment of trees, and that we shouldn't be spending so much time about this. We should be focusing more on housing needs assessment. And that's just my impression or my takeaway. I think I would be, yes, it'd be nice to have the rental units. But as Councillor Garnett says, it's really, what we really need is below market housing. And I know that that's a struggle to accomplish, but when we're asking to concede certain things that are important values in our community, what I'm looking for is, the developer may not think certain things are important, but we do. And so what I look to is, okay, if we're going to be a bit flexible on those things that we think are important, what is the community going to get to compensate for that? And I'm not seeing that balance there for us. So I'll let it go ahead for now, but I continue to have concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Just a question of clarification through staff. Just in our process, we've indicated that with these series of motions and conditions, that the zoning amendment bylaw will come forward. Is it known whether that will be the next council meeting at this juncture?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. So this part 2 of the recommendation speaks to the variance permit application, and notice will be sent to occupants within 75 meters. Will that come forward at the next council meeting? Or will that be held until the bylaw comes forward?
I anticipate we'll try to time them so that they come forward together, so the whole project can be approved in one fell swoop.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. Councillor Duck, please.
Thank you. I'm now putting on my council hat versus council liaison hat. One of the things and I was concerned about, and I want to get clarification from staff, is that the rezoning of this is to provide purpose-built rentals, and I think that was at direction of the town, not direction of the proponent. And I just would ask staff if they could clarify the rezoning. Was that a requirement of the town's OCP or a direction from the developer?
Through the mayor, Councillor Duck, I'm not sure I understand the question. The applicant has requested to rezone the property to, I believe, the RM7 zone.
Right.
So it's an applicant-initiated rezoning, yeah.
That was what I wanted to be clear about, because it was just relative to Councillor Garnett's comments.
Right.
For the eastern portion of the property.
Yes, the other portion is already zoned RM7, correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was to link the two more than anything.
Yeah, the property would have to be amalgamated as well,
Yeah.
or it has been amalgamated, sorry, it's got split zoning, so it needs, the applicant has requested that the entire property be zoned RM7 instead of just half of it.
Okay. The other thing, just to point out that the parking, and I still support some sort of parking variance coming forward if that's an option, is that the parking that exists is 1-for-1, as Councillor Rantoul pointed out, but it's unhooked, and if you're not aware of what that means, is that one spot doesn't go to each unit. It's an opportunity for a 3-bedroom to have 2 or 3 parking spots. So yes, it will put some pressure on our street parking, and that concerns me, and that why is seeking that thought of the parking variance. I am happy to hear that the proponent hears about the trees and recognizes the importance of trees in the community, and stated tonight, for example, that if there's any damage to those cherry trees, they will be replaced. And as Councillor Garnett pointed out, that takes some time, but at least there's that indication that, and I'm certain that, given that there's a representative from that property to the south, that there'll be a very close eye on those cherry trees to make sure they survive. And I think that's important relative to the community. And I do know that as part of that development permit, they have to also add a number of trees. But as Councillor Garnett pointed out, that just takes time to develop. So it is a bit of a tricky one. It's an odd-shaped lot, which is creating a lot of these issues. And certainly the geological formations on the south and on the 3rd Street versus 4th Street equally presents a challenge to the developer. And equally, I would have liked to see more options about how parking variances could be utilized to give a little more flexibility in the design of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. I just, from one of the points you mentioned, want to seek clarification from staff, because we did see it in some of the correspondence that we've received previous to today, and we saw it in one piece of the correspondence that was new to our agenda package, and that was concern over the parking not being attached. My understanding, seeking clarification through staff, is that's not within the purview of council.
So this is a discretionary rezoning application. Probably the only circumstance in which council could make something like that a condition of development approval.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll turn to look to call a question. Those in favor? It carries unanimous. Thank you. And thank you again to staff.
Point of order?
Yes?
Can I suggest a 5-minute recess?
Let's recess to 7:45, please. Okay, we'll look to reconvene in just a moment, please. So we'll reconvene now at 8:45, thank you. And we're now turning to item 12B, which is we're receiving the minutes from our Committee of the Whole meeting on April 7th. Those don't require a motion or any discussion. Sorry, I will ask, are there any corrections to the minutes? Not seeing any. So I'll now turn to Councillor Novick, who chaired that Committee of the Whole meeting, to take us through the 4 recommendations, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a number of recommendations. The first one is for development variance permit.
Actually, if you can just start with the recommendation.
Okay, the recommendation is for R1, that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 2353 Harbor Road be notified regarding development variance application number DV100387 to reduce the setback to the natural boundary to allow for the construction of a 2.4 meter high retaining wall along the natural boundary setback in the near yard, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to Council at the time of consideration of the approval of the variance.
We have it moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any motivation?
Nothing further was fully discussed at the meeting.
Councillor Duck, please.
Yeah, and on looking at this property, it was sort of a no-brainer that had to be done. Unfortunately, as we've heard in other previous, this is a case where we are losing 4 trees as a result of this. Just there's no way around it. And I know that the strata will be planting trees to accommodate that loss. But yeah, these are 4 good-sized trees, but otherwise the place falls into the ocean. So yeah, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard spot, or a rock and a tree in this case. So yes, I think it's unfortunate, but the best solution that can be made available. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favour? That carries unanimous. Thank you.
And recommendation 2, the recommendation is, and I so move, that staff prepare a zoning amendment bylaw for zoning amendment application number RZ100115 for 2270 Harbor Road to amend the zoning bylaws conditions of use for retail and office uses in the marine industrial (W1) zone to allow non-marine related uses in 4 commercial units on the property, and that the bylaw be brought before council for consideration of first and second readings, and whether to schedule a public hearing on the bylaw.
Second.
Discussion?
Nothing to add.
I'll turn to the seconder, Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the members of the public who came forward this evening to speak to this item. You know, I certainly concur the value of the sector to our community, and concur that Sidney really is the gateway to the Southern Gulf Islands and to that boating community, and how important it is. I guess my position, and we'll see how it holds as we move forward in this process, has been that we're talking about 4 relatively small strata units in a larger project. So these units vary between 800 square feet and 1,600 square feet. You know, I concur with the discussion that we had at Committee of the Whole, where a variety of services are required in an industrial neighborhood to be able to provide services, not least of which to immediate residents, but also to individuals who work in that community. And so, you know, I often look to West Sydney, and there's a nice mix of industrial manufacturing, and yet there's a place where you can grab lunch. There's a place where you can have some necessary services to your business community, to your employees as well, and that may well be what this serves to provide. So I continue to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith?
Thank you. Yeah, I continue to be really concerned about considering a spot rezoning based on the experience of one developer. And I agree with my colleagues. I'll concede that I don't think this is gonna damage Beacon Avenue, as colleagues last week argued, very adeptly at, and I'll concede that. But I do feel that although it's only 4 units, it's I do think it will set a precedent, and it's a slippery slope to go down. And I think staff articulated that in the report as well. I agree with comments made that, we need to look at things like this, Harbor Road and other areas, and sometimes take a second look at whether the vision we had is still makes sense or not. And I agree that that's something that we should do. However, the process that we've set out for ourselves and the community to do that is we have a regular review cycle of our zoning bylaw and our OCP bylaw. And I think we're going to start looking at the OCP and zoning bylaw in the next year or two. And so to me, I think it's premature to make the assumption that Harbor Road no longer works in its current format, because we heard from one business owner on the street that is having trouble renting some units there. So for me, it seems preemptive. It seems not responsible to changing what could be something different on Harbor Road just based on what the difficulty of one business owner is experiencing. We know that we're in a unique environment, economic environment now. Tariffs, the stuff going on in the Middle East, fuel prices. So it's not a good time for people necessarily to be investing. And we see that in the residential area as well. And we did talk about that last week. Just one other new thing that I didn't cover last time is that some of my colleagues indicated that, they might have some reservations, but they want to hear what the rest of the community has to say. And I guess, we have heard through our regular processes, as was articulated here tonight, through Economic Development Plan, the OCP, the zoning bylaw. The other factor that I'm thinking about is the amount of staff time that we're going to be devoting to this. So, for colleagues who are thinking, well, let's just wait and see, and maybe I'm not too keen on this, but we'll see what the community has to say. I'm pretty sure, just based on sidebar conversations I've had at Sidney Breakfast Club and at the Chamber's Marine Committee, that they're not going to be in favor of this. And I guess what I worry about is that the amount of staff time that we're asking staff to do this against a recommendation of theirs, that they're going to have to redraft the bylaw. We're going to have to hold public hearings. They're going to have to roll up that information, bring a report, and I just think that's way too much work for us to put onto staff and ourselves for the sake of one business owner who is experiencing some problems. So for those reasons, I will continue to not support this going forward.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. On my speaking list, I have next Councillor Duck, then Councillor Gurnett, then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I share equal concerns that my colleagues do, and I'm thankful for the quote that came through public participation tonight on the proponent speaking in 2022, and it kind of shines a light on this. And I equally share the concern that we have only 3 vacancies of this. He has successfully sold 1 unit, so of the 4, there's only 3. Now that could be sold, and so this would open the door for future sales of that, and has plenty of use of the space below, which isn't as tightly regulated to marine use of the storage unit. So I'm not feeling that things are so bad off. The concern I have here, and why I wanted to see this go further into the public domain, was that we have property owners to the east and west on various sides of whether this should be acceptable or not. And I would like them to raise their voices. I agree also that the slippery slope, we have a number of other properties that could be developed in the future, and people will be pointing, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And that, again, limits the vision we have expressed on Harbour Road. So I'm a little concerned with that. I've also heard that property owners on either side of this property assessments have increased dramatically because of the residential units that are now located in this property, impacting the overall values of the properties there. So we have properties on Beacon Avenue that have been vacant longer than this property has been vacant. Mother Nature's is one example, and there are others. So we're in, as my colleague said, an economic climate that may call for longer waiting times, and who knows what the sale or lease or options around that are being offered. Are they concurrent with what the current market is calling for? So I'm not supportive of it being there's a number of businesses or residences in that whole development that are done well, and we're talking about 3 that aren't or haven't been put in that position. So I'm looking forward to further discussion on this, and at this point we'll continue to support it going forward for that further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gannett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And as well, thank you to the 2 individuals that spoke to this item in public participation, and I know they were both involved rather heavily in OCP and zoning processes, so input, and that quote was quite stark. You did a bit of digging, obviously. For me, it's about scarcity, and we heard this, and I've mentioned it before about the dog grooming in the West Side Industrial Group, but the marine industrial section we have it's a scarce area, and it's one that we should be protecting. Yes, maybe there's issues for this individual right now, but I mean, it's talked about in the CRD, RGS, Regional Growth Strategy. We heard about it from businesses, from individuals such as those in the crowd tonight, through the zoning bylaw process. And although the zoning bylaw process, and it was just short 2 years ago, there were many aspects we couldn't speak to in terms of public hearing. This was one we could, and we heard from people, and we heard quite clearly that they wanted this to be maintained this way. So the question becomes, this particular applicant, when they went through the process, and as the people that spoke and I asked questions last week, acknowledged this issue of not wanting storefront for these particular businesses they referenced, that already existed. It existed before they started the process. Our zoning bylaw already had limits on the retail spaces, and those were the similar, or if not actually exactly the same as the new zoning bylaw. There was more controlling zones around the office uses in the space, but you couldn't do medical, dental. Those were already in place prior to this. So development permit in June 2023, building permit issued in November of 2023. So the question becomes, the individual developer knew the conditions they were building in. They constructed the building and designed it a certain way, knowing those prevailing conditions were existing at the time they went ahead with it. Do we change the decisions we made based on public feedback 2 years ago to as Councillor O'Keefe said, to adjust for one person and one developer when they clearly had an opportunity to develop something different based on the timing? And for me, the answer is no. This is too critical of an area. I don't work in the marine industry, but I've spoken to people who do, and everybody that does says the same thing. Same thing with our West Side Industrial. This is space you have to guard. When it disappears, it's gone. And then how do you fight to get it back? You can't. So I've continued to not support the recommendation, and I think we need to guard it closely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. I'll turn to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I'll continue to support this motion. I don't really have concerns with it, as I spoke to last time, and as Councillor Rintoul has already said, having services there to serve the staff in the neighborhood, I think, is actually helpful to the continued thriving of this sector of the business community. When I first moved into that neighborhood, this site was the Blue Peter, as the mayor pointed out last time, the Blue Peter pub, which on the one occasion that I went before it burned down, was very busy. And I was given to understand it was somewhat of a fixture of this community for many decades before I moved here. And so I feel there's some sort of a retroactive amnesia about people understanding how communities are built organically versus how we put things on paper and say this is how we'd like them to be. At the time we did the OCP and looking at making sure this marine area was saved, in large part it was industrial. I know there was some marine because it was about maintaining access to marinas and boat launches was important. This site having these commercial would not be impacted by that particular specific concern, which was maintaining ocean that had that commercial. When I walk through the west side now, I see most of, if many at the very least, of the marine businesses over there, which are probably as numerous as the ones down on Harbor Road, have all expanded, and they've been doing extremely well, and a number of them have even moved venues, and they have not moved over to Harbor Road, they've stayed over there on the west side. And so I understand people will say things, but I pay much more attention to the way the businesses actually behave. And I suspect that a big part of why they behave the way they do has to do with simply square footage, and that this is constrained because it's next to the ocean in a residential area. And so the particular industrial needs of our businesses would not be met specifically by the site as the way it is. And there's very little we can do retroactively to change that because of just the density of existing construction in this neighborhood and surrounding uses. And so I'd much rather use this site, have the site be used for what can actually be built there than maintained for something which it doesn't look like can because it isn't. And so, if members of these specific manufacturing communities that are impacted and have actual lived experience with the demands for this site can come forward and explain why keeping this vacant for longer is necessary, and that there's only very specific reasons, over the past couple of years that this has been vacant and impossible, couldn't be filled, but ordinarily this would be very high demand. I would rethink that. But if it's simply members of the public who do not work in this industry, who are not looking for industrial space of any kind, who are simply going to assert that this should be done, I would weight that much, much more lightly, because I want to actually see what businesses do and not just kind of aspirations for the site. Thanks.
Thank you for the discussion, Councillor. Council. I'll speak on the item now. And that is, I was supportive of this going forward, and I did indicate that I did want to hear. We had a limited number of responses from the 14 Harbor Road commercial businesses, and we had people on both sides. We had letters, in full support, letters. I had a letter from Van Isle Marina strenuously asking us to deny the request, but we had another long-term, what I would call pure marine industrial business, indicate their support for this, and the rationales were different. The rationale for the support was concern over the economic vibrancy. That the longer you have vacancies in your business district or sub-district, if you want to call it, the more concerning it can be. So, so I was supportive of continuing this process to hopefully hear from more of the specific Harbor Road businesses. One of the things that I spoke to in support of the application, but is now giving me cause for pause. So it's the same it's the same factors, if you will, or the same facts I would indicate, or the same history, is actually leading me, possibly leading me to taking the other side. And that is, I made the point that when I came to the community, I was here in 1991, and when I came back to the community in 2001, the Harbor Road Marine Industrial and associated businesses in West Sydney had an outstanding reputation in the Pacific Northwest in the marine industrial field, and they had built themselves literally up over decades from the 40s and 50s. And so they became strong advocates. They were strong advocates in the 90s, but became even stronger advocates through the early 2000s, through the OCP in 2007, for the marine industrial OCP designations and zoning. But what I indicated in the last meeting is observing what's occurred over the last 26 years, is that it has continued to flourish while there have been non-marine industrial businesses as going concerns there. I mentioned, and Councillor Duncan repeated again this evening, the Blue Peter Pub was there for a long, long time. It's not marine industrial. There was an insurance company that was on the same property. That's not marine industrial. And we've seen the massage, we've seen the cafe, we've seen another restaurant, we've seen residential uses, and I described some of the history of how there was discussion and debate about whether there should or shouldn't be residential use in the upper stories. And it is limited. The residential is limited by virtue of our OCP and zoning bylaws. So there's an attempt at balance there. But I said, so my rationale was, well, given that successful history, if you will, with other non-marine industrial uses, would this make a significant difference in its continued success in the future? And I was giving thought that it wouldn't necessarily. But where I'm starting to shift is that it is limited space, a marine industrial space on that side, while there will continue, likely be other marine industrial businesses that locate other businesses in West Sydney, as properties or commercial spaces change hands over time there. It is through the OCP process and through the zoning process, the zoning bylaw changes that we did. We had significant input, and the strategy, if you will, is to give the Harbour Road Marine Industrial its best chances of success by maintaining the marine industrial zoning. So I'm going to continue, given that we've come this far, given that we do have long-time businesses on either side in the limited correspondence that we've received. I appreciate the public input and the experience from the members who spoke this evening. I will look to see, and if it remains limited, then we'll have to go on what we've heard in the past and take a decision from there. I'll leave my remarks there and turn to Councillor Novick for a second time.
Thank you. I'm really of mixed opinion here. We allowed this project to be built. This project is a storage unit, which one could argue has value to the marine industry, but that storage unit could have been built anywhere. And if push comes to shove, it's no more marine use than anything anywhere else. There's residential units in that property which are not marine. One of the benefits of the marine designation on that road is the access to water. Well, this project doesn't use the access to water that most marine industries would need or want or have to use. And so I kind of have to look in the mirror and say, well, perhaps we're the architect of our own misfortune in some way, because we allowed this project to proceed in such a way that we've kind of backed the developer into a corner. We've allowed him to build this project with those 4 tiny strata office spaces, and yeah, what's going to go in them? When our colleagues here have suggested that so many of the marine industries here are large and require extensive space, Titan boats, for one example. And yes, the ones on the west side keep expanding. It doesn't speak well to what could potentially be a tenant on that street, if it's not going to be a marina or boat repair or something like that. And this project is none of those things. And so we don't really have much in the way of options. If we allowed a project to go into that space that really isn't marine industrial from the get-go, then why are we so concerned about those 2 small or 3 small offices that are in the 1,000 square foot range? It doesn't make sense to me. I like the idea of keeping it marine industrial, but we've kind of forfeited that for this project. This project is no more marine industrial. It would look the same if it was put anywhere else in Sydney. It doesn't need the water access that Harbour Road businesses would normally want to access. So I'm going to continue to support this, even though initially my thoughts were that, yeah, we should maintain it as a marine only area. But I don't see how we can. I don't see how that landlord is, or the strata owner is going to be able to dispose of those properties in a way that satisfies that quote-unquote W1 or marine industrial use. I just don't see it. It doesn't appear likely. And if it would be likely, it would take an unreasonably long time. Thank you.
Thank you. I will turn to second-time speakers, but we've each had an opportunity to speak on this, and we have spoken at some length at a previous meeting. So I would look to call a question at the earliest opportunity. Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. So I'll try and I'm just bringing up new stuff. So I think from the comments I've heard, there's maybe an understanding that there's no marine use that would be valuable for those 3 small units because they're too small. So people talked about marine industrial, marine businesses need big footprints for boats and maintenance and that sort of thing. Part of that is true, but I don't know if many of you recall when we were, when Coast was talking about setting up a hub. They're looking to set up a marine hub, and at the time, they were taking a look at what was available in Sydney. And so the vision for a marine hub and supporting the marine sector, it's not just about big marinas and big boat yards, it's also about having a hub for the marine sector that has complementary businesses. So things like marine architects, marine insurers, marine consultants, there's a lot of spin-offs from the marine sector that I don't think maybe all of us are completely aware of. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that although those 3 units are small, that they couldn't be rented by a business that is relevant to the marine sector. In regards to comments about we don't have any options, we have forfeited our ability to say no to this. You know, I don't agree with that. As Councillor Garnett mentioned, it's unfortunate for the business owner, but they knew what the guidelines were at the time. They built it anyways, and it's unfortunate, but I don't think that's our fault, and it's not our responsibility to fix that issue for them. Our responsibility is to our community, not to one developer. Thank you.
I'll listen to. Thank you. I will just remind council that when we're speaking for a second time, the intent is not to interpret or speak to what other council members that have said. It is to speak to the motion itself. Seeing no further discussion, I'll look to the call of question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Gurnett and Councillor O'Keefe are opposed. The motion carries. Councillor Novick, we'll ask you to continue with recommendation 3, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Recommendation number 3, and I so move that the 2006 that the following 2026 grant and aid requests be approved. Number 1, Sydney Guidance Scout Hall Society for $1,000. Number 2, Sydney Lawn Bowling for $1,500. Number 3, Friends of St. Andrews for $4,500. Number 4, Need to Crisis Intervention and Public Information Society, $3,000. Number 5, Friends of Sydney Parks, $1,600. Number 6, 676 Kitty Hawk Sponsoring Committee Society, $1,000. Number 7, Navy League of Canada, $1,000. Number 8, Parkland Parent Association, $1,000. Number 9, Stelly Secondary School Parents Dry Grad, $750. Number 10, Circular Farm and Food Society, Vancouver Island, $3,000. Number 11, Kids Sport Greater Victoria for $1,650 for a grand total of $20,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I don't believe there's any motivation through the lengthy discussion we had at that meeting. I'll look to call a question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. And recommendation 4, please, Councillor.
Recommendation 4, and I so move that the following 2026 grant and aid requests be denied. Number 1, Saanich Peninsula Folk and Fiddle Society. Number 2, Capital Bike Society, Victoria. Number 3, Rewired Recovery Foundation, Soberfest. Number 4, St. Andrews Abbeyfield Housing Society. Number 5, Compost Education Center. Number 6, Capital Region Food and Agricultural Initiatives. Number 7, the Farmlands Trust, Greater Victoria Society. Number 8, FED Urban Agricultural Society, My Fed Farm.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Again, I don't think there's any motivation. I don't know how many of these applicants may be listening, but just for the record, every year we receive far more requests, or a much higher dollar request than we have within the budget. And we do try to align the grants that we to our community priorities. And they are certainly, the ones that we are denying are certainly worthwhile causes, and we wish them well in their futures. I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Novick, for taking us through those. We're now turning to the item of correspondence, which is has a heading of potential sites for supportive housing and sheltering. A letter from the CRD dated March 26th. I just want to give a little bit of background. It's coming from the covering letter, and then turn to Mr. Edwards for some possible comment or information. So just for context, it's not included in this letter, but the letter starts off saying at the December Capital Regional Board meeting, we received a report, and it's called the What's Heard report on regional engagement in supportive housing and sheltering, which is attached in this. But what led to that report was several months prior to that, directors had brought forward to the CRD board a request to see what, under the current services that the CRD provides, the CRD could be capable of supporting the supportive housing or sheltering. And so with the engagement that occurred, and you can that level of engagement is described within that What We Heard report. That report came forward at the December board meeting. At that same December board meeting, Provincial Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs, the Honourable Christine Boyle, requested to present to the board. It was a public meeting. It was a good presentation, and there were questions from, I would suggest, a majority of directors directly to the housing minister on both supportive housing and sheltering. And the outcome of that was for staff to bring back the approach to forward this letter, as we've received this evening, with the information from the What We Heard report, and asking municipalities, as Minister Boyle did, to consider identifying potential sites within their jurisdictions suitable for the development of supportive housing and sheltering, and report them directly to the province. So the CRD is not the one that would receive this information or act on this information. And as the minister indicated, noted, there may be resources at the province available to support such projects. So that's a little bit of background and fleshed it out just a little bit more than is in the covering letter. I want to turn to Mr. Edwards, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've covered off the background and the intent of the letter quite well. The only piece that I will add is that from an administrative point of view, there's no response required here. The town is currently, as you know, operating a emergency cold weather shelter, and we are pursuing options for looking at an alternative site for a shelter. But as you also know, the town has very limited land available, and and staff have previously looked at the similar request when it came previously for affordable housing initiatives, and that resulted in very few options being presented. And so at this time, staff are of the mind that there currently aren't any viable sites available, and we would not be recommending to council to respond directly to the province with any potential sites.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions, but just offer to council that one of the options for us is for a motion to receive for information. I'll turn to questions or comments to Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. No questions, but some comments. I'm pleased to receive this report. There's some good information in here. I agree that we've started to do our part in terms of the emergency sheltering. There's a few things that I wanted to highlight from the report, mainly for the benefit of our community. So one of the big takeaways for me was that the report notes that there's not just one profile or population that is experiencing homelessness. My observation has been that the general public has sometimes tend to focus on the group of homeless individuals who are experiencing mental health and substance use challenges. And what we see in this report highlighted is that there's a number of people that are experiencing homeless that don't have mental health and substance abuse issues. Seniors especially, which I think is really important for our community. That was highlighted in the report. We heard that from the gentleman from St. Andrew's Church last week, that their numbers of people seeking support have increased dramatically. 5 of those, I think he said 4 or 5 were seniors. I happened to have a conversation with the housing navigator at the Shoal Center last week. And what she told me is she has a client list of 162 seniors in the community that are looking for housing. And sadly, there's nothing she can refer them to. There's only a handful of places on the peninsula, and they're all full. So some of those people, she doesn't know what's going to happen with them, except, put on a wait list or live in their cars. The report also talks about other populations of homeless people, students, persons with living with disabilities are the biggest group that are most likely to be homeless. So they've got brain injuries, mobility issues, and people who are extremely vulnerable and unable to work and get housing, gender diverse individuals, immigrants, farm workers, women fleeing violence, and others. So I think it's important, and I wanted to highlight that to our community so that when we start looking for new locations for our emergency cold weather shelter, that there'll maybe be a better understanding of what homelessness encompasses. The other thing I think it highlights for me, and I hope for council, is that while it's great that I think that we've put the emergency cold weather shelter in place and hopefully do that next year, it just underlies the huge need there is for that lower cost housing for so many people. If you're looking at the CBC today, released information from Stats Canada shows that financial circumstances for those at the lower end of the income scale have got worse. And so it's a really significant problem, and that will be on my mind, and I hope others' minds, as we look at housing proposals in the future, and we put policies in place to incentivize more affordable housing for those who are most in need. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe, for highlighting that. Councillor Garnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor O'Keefe for those for those points as well. And I guess when I was looking over this document, I couldn't help but think why we are where we are. And I saw the report as well. The gap is stretched between those who have and those who have not has gotten larger in 2025. And while I can appreciate the housing minister and using the context, there may be resources available. I would have thought that would have said there will be if you're really serious about it. But again, it's for me when I read the document, I'm thinking here we are again, and it's, you know, as much as we try to do at a municipal level, is this, you know, it's not really our purview. This is a provincial responsibility. Senior level of government have failed on this file for decades, both federal and provincial. They got out of the housing market and left everything to private, and that's created this situation. And as the CAO had mentioned, you know, we don't have available lands. We're doing all we can, but Councillor O'Keefe's right. We can do it through policy and hopefully get developers on board with providing this kind of housing in our community as part of some kind of trade-off, as I spoke to earlier in the evening. But, you know, we only have so many levers, and this is a problem that's been decades in the making, and it was short-sighted of the people in the 80s when they started this and continued it decade after decade after decade. And now it's troubling for me to see a level of government above ours kind of dropping the ball on something else on us while they look to take away other areas that are supposed to be in our purview. So we're in a very interesting situation right now as a municipal government, and what we should and shouldn't be taking the lead on. But you know, it is something we have to reconcile with, because as Councillor O'Keefe mentioned, like 162 seniors, like that's, I mean, my parents aren't alive anymore, but I can't even imagine having to worry about whether they would find somewhere to live. And that's a sad reflection on our society in general. But thank you very much for bringing it forward, and hopefully these other communities that have been requested that we'll be able to find something for people in their municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gannett. Seeing no further discussion, I'll just note further to some of the comments. We're fortunate. While CAO Edwards indicated, you know, we are very limited on our land resources in the town. We have municipal facilities on our lands. Is that we're fortunate to have organizations like Beacon Community Services operating Wakefield Manor, which is below market affordable housing for seniors, and has been in place for quite some time. We're fortunate to have St. Andrews as an organization operate Abbeyfield, again a small but affordable seniors residence. And so they are limited in our community. We have a disproportionate, just demographic-wise, we have a disproportionate, very high proportion of seniors, which, you know, exacerbates the challenges a little. So thank you for receiving the report and the comments and considerations. And I would look to council if they have a motion to go forward.
Motion to receive.
Second.
I'll look to call the question. All in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Item 15 is the correspondence for information that we're receiving by virtue of being on the agenda. We have no notices of motion, or we're not going in camera this evening, so I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody moves, everybody seconds. We are adjourned.